Uh, Hi guys, hope you're keeping well. I've got a wonderful guest with me today, a guy from his channel Driving Maul. The description in is the link is in the description below, so hope you check out his channel out to subscribe to it. Paul from Driving Maul, how you doing, man?
I know, good, thank you. Yep, bright and breezy day and a massive weekend of rugby coming up, so it's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. We thought we'd do this thing because Paul's English and I'm Scottish, so we're gonna have a bit of a friendly chat, banter, see how we get on. Just talk about the weekend's games. Mainly, we'll start with England, Scotland, and what are our thoughts on it, and we'll go from there. So, Paul, what are your thoughts on the England Scotland game?
Oh, my thoughts are that I'm being the other side of the world through a camera. It's safer than being next to you and discussing it, where we might get into fisticuffs. No, um, generally my thoughts are that basically Scotland have had so many injuries that this isn't really Scotland, as it were, and that we shouldn't be judging them on what we see across these games. And it's going to come down to that back three, or Sean Maitland in particular, I think. On the defensive side for Scotland, because let's be honest, that's how England have made most of their gains this Six Nations, is by having a fullback who isn't quite in position, or in France's case is totally at sea, and basically finding lots of space back there to kick into. So the fact that you're on Sean Maitland, which is what, your third choice fullback at best,
Yeah,
is. And then you've got two wingers who, again, Darcy Graham 3 caps, Brian McGuigan 7 caps. Not exactly. I mean, actually, if we run through that back line, Ali Price, Finn Russell, fine, 23 caps, 43 caps, and experience there. Barry McGuigan 7, Sam Johnson 3, Nick Gregg 8, Darcy Graham 3. I mean, there's no experience in that back line, and then Sean Maitland with 39. So, that inexperience there, and if they get their positioning wrong, then Farrell and Slade between them are just going to kick in behind them, and that's going to be the game from a defensive point of view for Scotland.
yeah. I mean, I don't know about like lack of experience because I think there's players there like Darcy Graham. I think against Wales showed what the quality he has, and I think he's going to be a potentially excellent player for us going forward. I think,
Oh, I don't get it wrong, okay? I'm not questioning their ability, and I
yeah,
think Darcy Graham, as you say, is potentially an excellent player.
hmm
He's a very good player already, and he's got some fantastic skills, but he is potentially a very good player. This Saturday, he is an inexperienced, very skillful player who needs to make
yeah,
sure that he's awake the full 80 minutes and in the right position the full 80
right,
minutes. Him carrying the ball forwards and dancing through players, absolutely no problem at all with him for doing that. It's more,
yeah,
will
position.
will those will a bunch of guys who have not played much together know and be in the right position for each other to cover that whole backfield,
Yeah, no,
because it's going to be a kicking game.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I'm just like commenting. I do think it's interesting how you're, going by experience and togetherness over actual like individual talent. Because I don't always review it by how many caps folk have, but yeah, I mean we've all got our different ways of doing it, so that's absolutely fine. But yeah, Sean Maitland at fullback. I think I touched on this in my other preview video, which is going to be going out as well. I think that's going to be a big thing is how he covers the back field because England's kicking game, most especially in the first 2.5 games, they didn't kick well in the second half against Wales, and they didn't kick much at all against Italy, from what I recall. Just ran the ball everywhere.
Well,
Um,
yeah, if you're going to pick Teo and Tuolangi, you're not going to kick the ball.
yeah, but yeah, I think like that's going to be how because that was my biggest concern is how Maitland covers the backfield from fullback because England's kicking game ran ragged. Henshaw at fullback. I didn't think actually Henshaw had a bad game in that game. It's just England's kicking game was so pinpoint accurate that there wasn't all that much he could have done most of the time other than just what
But
he
also,
did.
you're asking a guy who's not played fullback for 2 years
Yeah,
to
yeah,
slot
very true.
into a. Now, I'm not sure where Sean Maitland's primarily been playing for Saracens,
He
but
normally plays left wing.
yeah, I was going to say I remember him mainly playing wing. He's a player that I know from down because I live in New Zealand, so he's a player that that I rate and thought he was going to do fantastically when he went up north, and he has done very well.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong. But again, it's the fact that you're putting a winger in there, and we saw what happened with Houget at fullback for the French.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't even there. It's like what? It's like he just. So that's a different matter, right? Because I just think Houget wasn't there wasn't here most of the time, so can't really count him. But yeah, I mean, again, that is a thing. Like how is he gonna cover that? How is he gonna cope with England and putting that much pressure on him as well? I think he'll do okay under the high ball because he's generally a decent under the high ball. But that's the biggest thing. And attack, he doesn't have the quite the speed or the footwork that the likes of Hogg or Kinghorn have. So that's going to be. I don't think England will be hugely quaking in their boots when he gets a bit of space and he tries to swerve inside or counter attack. Whereas with likes of Hogg or Kinghorn, they would they'd at least keep them on their toes. So that's another thing.
But if he's got Darcy Graham with him, so I mean, ideally, your best counterattacks quite often happen if you can take the ball and then switch it across to the other side of the pitch and attack down that side. So if you can get him down, sort of catching it either on the left or right, and then switching it across field to either Byron McGuigan or Darcy Graham to run it back, then that'd be a good move.
Yeah.
And as we've already said, Darcy Graham's break against what we didn't actually say, but we've sort of hinted at, his break against Wales was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a very, very fair point. Because, but generally expect your wingers to be up with your fullbacks when you're attacking anyway. So, I think that could be, that'll be definitely a point. I think Darcy, he'll definitely keep the England defence on their toes, but. Again, the switch side of that, he's up against the most prolific try scorer in the Six Nations so far, in Johnny May. So how's he going to cope with up against May? I think one on one, May gets the ball, he's probably going to slice him. But what's your thoughts there?
I think it's the vice versa, isn't it? Whoever gets the ball is going to run around the other one. So both Johnny May's someone who over the last couple of years has really straightened his attack.
Absolutely.
Worked on his defence and high ball, and especially his work rate as well. Previously, it's a few years ago, he used to run sideways a lot, and his work rate wasn't too good. But he's worked on all of those, and he's now world class winger.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was somebody, I didn't rate him like a few years ago. I mean, if you'd asked me, I think round about the end of the Lancaster era, start of the Eddie Jones era, I mean, I'd just say no. I mean, I wouldn't have picked Johnny Graham England team at all if I was selector. But now he's come on leaps and bounds. He's a really fantastic winger, and as you said, like he's come on as you said. So that's all I've got to say there.
He's one of those examples where they've spotted something in a player. And then worked. Realised he's coachable, and then worked on all the rest and stuck with him. Whereas a lot of fans would have gone there and gone, no, get rid of him. He's useless. No, he's got something that's very good, and he's coachable. Hence that's why we're going to keep him. Now they're not going to say that out loud, but that's basically what's happened there. A bit like we've seen with a couple of players. I mean, like Elliot Daly. Initially, people were like, no, he's awful at fullback. It's like the guy's never played at fullback.
Yeah, his first game against South Africa, I thought he was absolutely shocking defensively. I think it was against it was in the summer tour last year against South Africa. I thought his defensive play was absolutely shocking that game. He was just all over the shop, and from what I remember anyway. And then since then, he's come on leaps and bounds, and definitely your first choice fullback now.
So can you remember him on his first game at wing for England?
Oh, was that? I'm just trying to think. Was that the autumn 2016 or?
So it was definitely one of the autumn ones, and it was against Argentina. And what's?
He got sent off early on. Yeah, that was,
he got red carded for taking the player out in the air. And you're like, that's a typical play of a centre playing on the wing. A winger would not have put himself in that position. Yeah. In that situation, and it was just he was out of position in a natural situation and made a mistake. Another player that springs to mind for this kind of stuff was James Hook when he went back to Gloucester from Perpignan, and everyone's like, oh yes, he's going to play at 10. It's going to be brilliant. But it's like he hasn't played 10 for 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to take him half a season to get used to playing 10 again. So don't expect too much too quickly. So
well, same with Henshaw at fullback for Ireland against England the first game.
Yep.
So yeah,
exactly. But I think that the real man that showed against Wales that he could really be a game changer in this one is Hamish Watson. Mm-hmm. Because we have been, I mean, this month, the big talk or the big new stat that everyone's learnt this Six Nations is dominant tackles. And because of that, because of what England did against Ireland. Now here's a guy who bounces off tackles and keeps going and gets over the gain line. So it's that really is the irresistible force against a movable object kind of thing. Will he get tackled, or will he be getting Scotland over that gain line? And once you got over the gain line once, it's much easier to do it again and again and again.
As long as he's not running into Billy Vunipola or Manu Tuolangi too often, I think you'll do all right there. So
that's to me that's a big question. I mean, obviously England missing Courtney Laws and Maro Toji. So in the engine room, who get through a bunch of work. So Hamish Watson, I guess the other question about Hamish Watson is how fit is he? Because he's obviously coming back from injury. So
well, he looked pretty good against Wales, which was surprising. Surprising in a way because he did make his club comeback for Edinburgh the week before against Treviso, and he didn't look fit at all. But then, I think that just shows like a class is permanent player, because I think Hamish Watson is a class player, that he has the ability to step up at international level even after a club game the week before. He's maybe not played that well, he just steps up as he did, and there's a lot of folk in Scotland calling that we need 15 Hamish Watsons to be in with a chance. So
yeah, no, I mean I did a post-match reaction to this game, to the Scotland Wales game with Squidge Rugby, and yeah, he was. He was saying lots of nice things about Hamish Watson, but again, Hamish Watson came on and did 20 minutes, half an hour,
yeah,
I think it was.
Yeah.
So can he last 80 minutes? And that's the question, I guess, for me, coming back from injury. Is his match fitness up, or are we going to see him for 60 minutes or for 50 and then have to go off for Josh Strauss?
Well, again, a lot of that I think comes down to if we can keep the ball long enough, how much we're keeping the ball, how much we're defending as well. So, that's going to play a big factor, because if you don't have the ball, you can't play rugby. So, it's not going to be much use there. But in defensively, he does work hard as well. He's good over the ball as well. But again, how much? Is he going to be sharp enough there? Is he going to turn over enough ball to keep us in the game at least? I don't know. It's going to be a tough one, because there's been times, especially in the autumn, he was going into contact with or without the ball. He was like just challenging at the breakdowns more or less himself, with maybe one or two other guys with us, and that's a big problem from us, without my regards, in comparing to teams like England, Wales, Ireland. Is the rest of them, they all make sure there's at least two or three guys there and that they're secure in ball. Whereas we just, sometimes someone makes a break and there's only one or two guys up there actually supporting, and it's bread and butter for a jackler, or it's makes the ball so slow. So that's another big concern. I mean, Richie, because pardon me, with this championship so far, it's mostly just been Jamie Ritchie and maybe one or two at times who've just been there working their asses off, getting to the breakdown and making sure we're getting the ball back quickly. But outside of that, it's been very inconsistent. So that's it's just a small detail, but to me those small details make a big difference.
They all add up. And I'm a bit surprised to see Johnny Gray on the bench, to be honest.
I'd say surprised, but I've been calling for him to be dropped to bench for a wee while, just because he tackles hard. He does tackle hard. He's decent in the line out, but outside of that, I haven't seen him making that much significant impact on games. Bar maybe the odd ruck now and again, but because he's carrying, he doesn't make great ground when he carries. He just often runs, doesn't get over the gain line, just runs stops at the gain line, or he just is pushed backwards, and and at the ruck as well. Even at times he gets quite easily pushed back. He doesn't make a significant impact. So I've been thinking that it should be giving. Because Gilchrist has done well, I would have gone for Gilchrist and Skinner in the second row, or maybe bring Richie Gray back because he's playing again. So, but Gregor Townsend doesn't want to use him right now. So for whatever reason, he's not fit enough, not playing well or enough or whatever. But that's my thoughts on that. So
yeah, but so, yeah, again, Skinner in the 6th jersey. Well, is that a matter of trying to get more bulk into the side?
I'd say
maybe?
so. Yeah, I think that's why he's in at 6, because. Of course, up against the English back row, you've got two powerhouses there in Wilson and Vunipola, and so I think that's I think that's reactionary, but I understand why that's been made. But I would have gone for Skinner in the second row, I think so.
Yeah, so well, it's the England side. I mean, England. We talked a lot about Scotland, really, but on the England side, pretty much a full strength side apart from those two locks that are missing through injury. Sure, there's the odd player here or there, but I think this is the first Six Nations, or the big difference between this year and last year is just the availability of players for Eddie Jones. So I think that's been the big turnaround is having fit players rather than having lots of injuries from last year, which kind of I guess shows you that we talk about depth and all this kind of stuff, but teams can only lose so many players before they drop off significantly a level at international, and so that's the main thing for England. Sure, they're missing Mako Binapola here. They're missing. I say Underhill would probably have featured somewhere. Missing Toji and Courtney Laws, as I mentioned, but on the whole, this is the kind of side you'd expect to start a Rugby World Cup final if England were to get there, kind of thing. So this is there's no punches being pulled or anything like that for this one. Still interested to see Manu Tuilagi at 12. I still think he's much better at 13. The problem is I don't think England has a 12. We've got a couple of good 13s, but no 12s. So that's going to be so he's going to grow into that role.
Yeah, because I actually think it's a good move, him going at 12. But I understand where you're coming from, that he's not quite developed that 12 role, because I think he could be a better version of Jamie Roberts, like what Jamie Roberts was for Wales at 12, where he just like smashes through opponents and just gets over the gain line at almost every carry, and but he's got a decent offload in him as well, so he could smash over, like draw a couple of tackles and draw defenders in, or he could get over and if it's just one tackle, get a quick offload away. But I think you'd have to do a lot to displace Henry Slade at 13, who I think is pretty much nailed on now for the 13 shirt going to the World Cup, I think, because I've been really impressed by him. What's your thoughts on Henry Slade?
So, being an extra Chiefs fan, I've been someone that's saying that wanting him to be picked much earlier than he has been, but I do get that he's taken time to grow into the role. I mean, Jack Nowell, again, if you remember his very first game against France, he dropped the ball in the first one, didn't have a great one defensively. So I think you've got these players. There are certain players who you bring in and just fit straight away. Mark Wilson's an example. Then there's other players like Henry Slade, like Jack Nowell, who've taken a couple of games to get used to it. Slade a few more, but now, yes, I think he's starting to show. What's really interesting though is that he hasn't passed the ball this Six Nations.
Really?
He's known to be exaggeration slightly, but relatively speaking, he hasn't passed the ball. So he's made like 2 passes a game. Now here's a guy who can really fizz the ball. Used to be came up through the ranks as a 10. Is a guy who's got some great hands, but that's not how England are using him. They're using him for his boot, which is also very good. But
he's got great pace as well. I think. I mean, especially against Ireland, I think as in terms of defence, that's what's worked really effectively. Is his pace just steaming up the line and giving them all sorts of problems, as well as his kicking game that you mentioned, which is being used to good effect mostly. But no, I really rate him. I think he's a really talented player, and I do agree with you that I should have been perhaps picked a bit earlier. I mean, the 2015 World Cup, the game against Wales, I don't know why Stuart Lancaster didn't pick him at 13 when Jonathan Joseph got injured. Because I mean, instead went for Burgess at 12. Yeah, but it is what it is now. But yeah, I think he's a player I have rated for quite a long time. And I think he's from an England's point of view, it's good he's getting his opportunity now, and he's fully meriting it.
Yeah, and you're looking at so him and Jack Nowell and Luke Cowan-Dickey, who's in the side, all came through that 2011 Junior Rugby World Cup side that won the Junior Rugby World Championship side that won the competition back in 2011. So you've got a core of those sort of guys. I mean, Anthony Watson would also be in there or thereabouts, who was also part of that crowd. So that generation has really matured quite nicely. So what's your prediction for this game?
Oh, I don't want to say. I've said it in my other video. England by 15-20. I just can't. I mean, I think if we can keep it tight early on and get under England's skins a bit, we might make it a contest. But I just think England in the end will just have a bit too much for us. I think. I think you'll win fairly comfortably in the end. Saddens me to say, but what about yourself?
Yeah, so I've gone England by 15 as well. I guess to temper the arrogant English guy who's going with this. Look, I think Scottish fans should not judge their Rugby World Cup chances on this Six Nations. This is not the Scotland team that will be turning up to the Rugby World Cup, injury permitting, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I still think they've got a good chance of going a long way and deep into that. I would not put any correlation between this tournament and that tournament later in the year. This Scotland side is a very good side when they've got their players. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they haven't got their players at the moment.
I do.
The other thing I would say is I will be live. I'll be live straight after this game doing post-match reaction with Rugby Forecast from Twitter. So if you want to hear a different viewpoint than the pundits, then jump over to YouTube and we'll be talking for 20 minutes or so, or 20 minutes, half an hour after the game.
Right. I'll try and keep tuned with that, man, and I'll check up on that. That's I'm pretty much kind of agreeing with you there. I mean, I don't like to use C injuries as an excuse because a lot of us Scottish fans we've been talking about depth for quite a while because we have got a lot of improved depth compared to in previous years. And I think it comes down to, as you said earlier about experience, a lot of it does come down to that. A lot of it does, because when you miss players like Stuart Hogg and John Barclay, it's obviously going to take a big toll on you, because I think majority of sides would find it very tough without those two players, especially Stuart Hogg at fullback. He'd get into any World 15.
Hogg, Barkley, Jones. I mean, you could keep on going, and you're going to get to 25, 30 plus players. You've lost a match day squad's worth of players. I mean, there's no excuses for injuries as in 2 or 3 injuries. Totally agree with you. When you're losing pretty much a whole squad, that's just there's only so much depth you can cope with.
I get where you're coming from there. But yeah, I mean, the World Cup, I don't know. I think because our first game's against Ireland, and I would have preferred if we had one of the more minnow nations just to feel our way in a bit. But against Ireland, from the positive point of view, it will encourage us to come out the blocks quickly, because Ireland, most tournaments tend to be quite slow to start with. As you guys found out with this one, it's England exploited in the first one, I should say. But I think World Cup Ireland, they might start a bit slow, but on the whole, I'd expect them to beat us. Sad to say, and then we could have New Zealand in the quarterfinals, which realistically could be the best we do. But I hope I'm wrong, and I hope we can actually step up, and that you're right, and that this Six Nations isn't going to tell us much about how we'll do on the whole.
But the other option, the other thing is that you've got the opening game, or the second day of the Rugby World Cup sees New Zealand, South Africa. So again, two teams coming into it cold. South Africa beat New Zealand in Wellington last year. So if South Africa win that, then you're meeting South Africa in the quarterfinals, and that's a different ball game entirely.
That very possible. But we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. I'd rather
exactly
see what happens there. So yeah, I think we're both expecting a England win, and but from an England point of view, going forward to the World Cup, what are your thoughts there?
Well, with France and Argentina in the group, and we've seen what France are like. Argentina are going to overplay their players because they've only got one professional team in Argentina, so England should top that group.
Yeah, no, I expect them
to get through to the quarterfinals, and then it's knockout rugby, isn't it? I've forgotten who they're likely to be up against.
Most likely Australia or Wales. So
Australia are a bit of a mess at the moment, to be honest with you, so because of that, I think that England should have a good chance against Australia, and what they've dropped down to sort of 5th, 6th in the rankings, or even lower than that actually. Sorry, 6th or 7th in the rankings. So I think, and there's lots of talk of Australia always arrive well at the Rugby World Cup and all of this kind of stuff, and but there is a bit of turmoil going on. We've seen that. I mean, Larkham's got removed as the attack coach, and talked about some difference of opinions between him and Checker. So not all is happy in that camp. So I think England got a good chance against them. Then you're in the semi-finals, and that's obviously going to be a tough game because I think it's New Zealand, isn't it?
Most likely New Zealand, yeah.
No, it's like you said, New Zealand, or yourselves when you've been South Africa. I would say that a par performance for them is basically a semi-final finish, and if you're a top 4 side in the world, that's what you should be looking for.
Mm-hmm. I think I agree with that. I wouldn't count England out whatsoever, because on your day you play well, you can beat anyone. You were unlucky against New Zealand when you played them at Twickenham in November, so it'll be but it's a wee while away.
If you want to go down okay, so at the moment we've got teams sort of people like, Ireland have been found out. They've basically played their hand too early, and everyone knows how they're going to play. Now, is that true, or have Ireland put a bunch of stuff in their locker that they're going to bring out for the Rugby World Cup? Pretty confident that New Zealand have got something have got a totally different game plan in the locker. So if you look at how they played against the British and Irish Lions in the first test compared to how they've played since, it's totally different. So on my channel we've talked about that before. We think that basically New Zealand have got a game plan in the locker that they're not showing anybody. So Wales, again, if we look at someone like Wales, for example, we know what their defensive game plan is. Very good. Their attacking game plan, haven't got a clue because they've not scored any tries. So again, have Wales got something in that locker that's totally brand new that no one's seen? I think with England, we've seen it. We know what they're going to do now. Maybe Eddie Jones is being a tactical genius and he's got something else in the locker that we haven't seen yet. But I think you're looking at your Waleses, your New Zealands. They've got stuff in that. They've got stuff in the locker that's going to come out for the Rugby World Cup, especially on the attacking front.
Mm-hmm. I think you could put Ireland into that category as well, because they've not been at their best this Six Nations. But I think there's a few folk in Irish forums saying like, oh, it's doom and gloom, we're not that good, we don't have a chance to the World Cup anymore. And it's like, just calm down, guys, because I think Ireland are definitely going to be there or thereabouts this World Cup. I actually see them getting to the semi-finals for a change, so I think it'll. Yeah, I think Ireland, this Six Nations have been a bit rusty, and I think they're saving something for the World Cup as well. So I think that'll be.
No, as I say, those top 4 teams, because you know what, New Zealand, Ireland, England, and Wales should top their groups, and then they should win their quarterfinals, and they should meet in the semi-finals. So those 4 we should in theory have 3 Northern Hemisphere teams in the semi-finals of the Rugby World Cup, which would be amazing.
Yeah, would be. But with New Zealand, I mean, that'll be an interesting thing for me, because I generally think with this New Zealand team compared to the 2015 one, because the 2015 one I think is possibly the best, one of the best, if not the best rugby team there's ever been. And there was just pretty much no weaknesses in that side at all. Whereas with this current New Zealand side, there are definitely areas teams can target, I think, and I don't think they've got as many leaders as the 2015 team did. But I mean, they've got a lot of good players, but I don't think they've got as many like top leaders. Like, you go through the 2015 team, you have your McCaw, Reid, Carter, Nonu, Smith, and you just go through them, and they're all potential captains pretty much. Whereas this team, you think you've got Reid, Retallick, Dane Coles if he's fit, Aaron Smith possibly, Bowden Barrett, and one or two, and a few others.
Well, Brodie Retallick is perhaps the best player in the world. He's a fantastic player. Don't get me wrong. He is not a captain. And now we're finding that out at the moment because he's captaining the Chiefs and they've lost all their games. Pardon
me, I've not kept up with the Super Rugby much recently.
So no, that's all right. He's just so you're looking at you're looking at Dane Coles captains the Hurricanes, Sam Whitelock, so Brodie Retallick's partner captains the Crusaders, and Reid used to captain the Crusaders. You then got Aaron Smith and Bowden Barrett there, who obviously are class players in that. But you're right, they're not. There isn't. You got Sam. When Sam Kane comes back from injury, he's another good guy as well. But you haven't got like 6 or 7 players with 100 caps, which is what you had with that 2015 side. Personally, that 2015 side got a little bit old. I think your Kieran Reid, not your Kieran Reid, sorry, your Richard McCaw and Conrad Smith especially, were perhaps a year, 2 years beyond, and actually were on the downward slide by that stage. So
still did a really good job though.
Well, yeah, we saw Conrad Smith getting hooked at half time, and Sonny Williams coming on in the final, and having a blinder. So they're still doing very good jobs, still very good players, but I think they probably peaked a year or so earlier than that. And just managed to eke it out. Yeah,
to the final. Yeah, I was just going to say they still won the World Cup, so still pretty good. I do agree with you about Richie McCaw though, because he was the last couple of years, because for about a decade he got away with so much shit at the breakdown, it was unreal, and then the last couple of years of his career he was starting to get penalised a lot more, I just remember the forums at the time were like, oh yeah, he's finally getting his comeuppance, but at the same time he still stepped up at the right moments. He still captained them to win another World Cup, so I mean to me shows what class players do. It's like maybe they're not always at their best, but when the time is right they peak and they shine when they need to.
Oh yeah, I'd say they lost. They lost something like 1,000 caps worth of experience to retirement straight afterwards. I mean, that is a crazy number. I mean, we're talking about players there who have probably got more caps than the entire Scotland squad. Or the entire Scotland starting 15. Not the squad, because you got Richie Gray's got 50 caps on the bench. But yeah, you got players there who've got more caps than the entire starting 15. And that is just that kind of experience. They know, and especially when that experience is winning experience as well. These are guys who have come through tough games, beaten Ireland with the last play of the game in Ireland, and games like that. It's not like they had 100 caps worth of losing experience like Parisi does. So he always tries to put the whole world on his shoulders and go for it, because he knows no one else can play around him. And then he overplays his hand. These guys know how to turn things around, and so that's kind of you can't replicate that. I mean, you do get obviously youthful, kind of go into it without any baggage and go, hey, I'll just try anything, I'll go for it, which can work. But when you're on your haunches on 60 minutes, and you want a drop goal from halfway or drop goal from just outside the 22, then Dan Carter's your man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And with interesting thing you bring up about youth players just coming in and saying, yeah, go for it. I think that can, I mean, for teams that are maybe not that experienced, that can maybe work for one-off games, but in terms of guaranteeing you teams that are a lot of experience and you're regularly winning, I think you can afford to blood players in around the experienced team. I think the 2015 New Zealand side did that very well with players like Milner Scudder and one or two others that I got names, Joe Moody as well. They just put those players around the really experienced crop. So yeah, I think I can see where you're coming from there. Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, have you got something else to?
No. I was going to say it's we're kind of running long. So how's?
All right. Do you want? We can briefly touch on the other games if you want. The Italy-France game, potentially Sergio Parise's last match for Italy in the Six Nations. What are your thoughts there?
Italy are a much improving side, okay, or Italy as a country, their rugby is much improving, but they're still a year or two away from the work that Conor O'Shea has done with grassroots, making it up to that the top level. So, I think France should be winning this one. And I'm backing basic individual skill over good coaching in this one, because their coaching is an absolute rubbish at the moment.
It's okay to swear on this, by the way.
Sorry?
It's okay to swear on this, by the way, if you want. I don't have a language
barrier. I don't swear on my channel at all. So
no. Fair play, man. It's on you. Can that DuPont Untermac partnership be given the freedom to do what they can do, and then having a player like Bastro keeps getting picked and people are like, why? Well, the thing is, he'll keep playing the whole game, whereas a lot of these other players will lose their heads and the heads will drop. So at least he will help. He will help with that. So, if the club combinations that they've got out of there from Toulouse and from is it Racing? I think Clermont are the top two.
Clermont. That's right. Yes, Clermont and Toulouse are the two kind of. And then if they can get those club combinations working, then they should cut Italy apart. And Italy just still not quite up there, and I say, and give them a season or two, and they're going to be. Fair play to Conor O'Shea, who said, "Look, we're happy for promotion, relegation. We'll be ready for it." So, with the whole World League stuff that's going on, so I think that's basically, in short, what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think France will just pip it, but I'm interested by France's selection that they haven't really picked a recognised goal kicker. I'm guessing it'll possibly be Intermac who's kicking, but their fullback Thomas Ramos they've dropped to the bench. So I think that was quite an interesting call. But again, I agree with what you said about getting the France clicking as a team, which hasn't come together at all. Apart from against us, which I think is more down to us making them look good than them actually looking as that good. I don't know if you saw my video; I was absolutely furious afterwards, but. But it's a shame Ramos has been dropped. He's another one of those young guns, isn't he? Along with DuPont and Tamac, Pernod, who are all coming through at the same time. And it's a shame that he's been dropped. I think onto the bench, at least it's to the bench, and he's still in the matchday squad. Yeah, that's the other problem with them. Is they just apart from the game between Scotland going to the Ireland game, they just keep chopping and changing far too much. It's like you need to. Guys like Ramos, Entamac, Dupont, and a few others there. They're young guys. They're still, working their way up in the international game, and I think they need, to play together more. And, and especially like the Toulouse guys are doing well right now. They need to be, I think to get up to that next level, they need to have more time together to gel. But if you keep chopping and changing as much as France have done since I think possibly as far back as the Bernard Laporte era, you don't really get that consistency or continuity at all, really. Like, especially in the spine of your team. Like, if you look at Ireland or Wales as an example, they have the spine of their team very settled, and you generally know, like, you can generally pick what team they're going to be picking each week. Whereas France, it's just basically a case of throw a bunch of dice up in the air and see where it lands, and that's your team more or less.
Yeah, and you're right. And that's, I mean, we did see some of that young youth combination working against Scotland, as you say, when they were given a bit of space and time, and they just need to get used to get the opportunities to grow into that. And you think about when Warren Gatland, when he first took over, he picked something like 14 players from the Ospreys. That was right. Yep, for his first game. So it shows that that you do, the combinations are big.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then Wales Ireland, the big game.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a pretty tasty encounter. I think it's going to come down to defence, and it's going to be decided by small margins, like these games mostly are. So, what are your thoughts on Wales against Ireland? Yeah,
I just got that second half against Scotland, for example, where Wales just defended the entire half until the last 5-10 minutes. I expect to see something similar. Hadley Parkes has been taking some flack, but I think we saw his worth in that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, and it's people have calmed down about saying that Biggar has to start ahead of Anscombe as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that bringing on a bit like Ronan O'Gara did towards the end of his career, where he would come on and finish games off and add a calming influence. I think that's Biggar's role going forwards, is to come and finish them off. Now, the big thing for Ireland, if they're going to have any chance in this game, is getting ahead, getting that lead. Both these sides love getting a lead and then just defending it. Mm-hmm. So whoever gets that initial lead in that after about 20 minutes is, to me, probably going to go on and win.
Yeah, I agree with that. And
so that's I can't see, these aren't, both these sides don't let teams come back at them. Basically,
I think, and to be honest though, I don't think, I mean, even though Wales are going for the Grand Slam, neither side have played that great. They've not played at their maximum at all, and from what they're capable of. But so I think the two sides, they're good teams, but they're not going in on their best form. What's your thoughts about that? Because
my thoughts about this are people are going, oh, this Wales side isn't so good. They've won 13 games on the trot.
Oh, no, I'm not saying they're bad.
They are a very, very good side.
I'm not saying they're a bad side at all. Like, if you won that many games, like you're not a bad side if you win that many games in a row whatsoever. Just the Six Nations, I just think we got a bit lucky in a couple of games.
And I took a bunch of flack on Twitter for pointing out that I think quite a few people did, but for pointing out that Wales had scored 9 tries in this tournament, the same as Italy. Now they've won 4 games, they've lost 4 games.
I love that, man. That was a good one.
And the be careful, because Scotland have scored 8. They're the only people that scored.
Right,
but and it's the end of the show. No, but my point wasn't to say, hey, look, Wales are playing badly and getting lucky.
Yeah.
My point was that defence wins championships. And so, yes, they're not looking all flowing, all scoring, but they are playing damn well defensively.
Absolutely,
And so this idea that they're not playing well, I think I disagree with. I think they're playing very well, but they're playing very well in a defensive mindset or angle rather than attacking angle. So they are playing very well at the moment. They're extremely difficult to break down, and so is this Welsh side as good as the Barry Johns and JPR Williams, etc. side? Maybe not, but it's still an extremely good Welsh side that should take out the Grand Slam, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean you bring that into the discussion. I think that's always a very difficult to compare, because you're comparing totally different eras of rugby. You're comparing the amateur and the professional era. So to me, to say like this is the greatest side, that's the greatest side, we're comparing completely different times, in the game, it's always like a very difficult one. I think even though there are plenty of players from both eras who would get into each other's teams. I mean, Gareth Edwards would be an excellent player in today's game, I've no doubt. If he obviously need to bulk up a bit, but as a rugby player, I think he'd definitely cut it. Barry John probably as well, and one or two others. But I was.
Yeah, I mean, they need to change their attitude. Having a beer before the game wouldn't work. And we do talk about that.
Players don't do that
anymore. So Pine Tree was considered to be the greatest All Black of all time until Richard McCaw came along, and then they compare him today, and they're like, well, he was considered a sort of a big barging lock. He's now the same size as the loose forwards. He wouldn't make it as a lock nowadays. No. So would he? So there is a physical dimension thing nowadays that actually these guys just weren't big enough to play the positions they're in now. Now when you're talking about players like Gareth Edwards and Barry John in the halves, there it's less important. But when you're talking about your forwards, but to have like that, was it that Neath front row that used to play for Wales, and
in the amateur era, it's the Pontypool front.
In the amateur era,
the Pontypool front row, yeah.
Pontypool, that's it. Thank you. Now those guys, doesn't matter what era, they would have made it somehow, because to be that good, you have been hyper competitive, and at the end of the day, the difference between the good and the very good players is how competitive they are, because that's how hard they push themselves, and that's how they get that extra percent. So those guys were hyper competitive in a way that I will never understand, and that's so they would have risen to the top, but not necessarily in the same positions that they actually achieved in their lifetime.
I agree with that. And again, I mean, you bring like hard work into the equation and ultra competitiveness. I'm fully on board with you there. And also I think mentally knowing when the right times are to play, when the right times are to just get over the line.
Somebody. Sorry, no.
As well. So it all adds up in the end. But no, I think Wales are going to win as well. I think just basically just because of their winning form, and they don't know how to lose, and even though I've said they've not played great, the biggest thing I'm bringing into the equation is they've stepped up when they've needed to, and they've got over the line in moments in games when they've needed to, even though they haven't a complete 80-minute performance on so far, but they know how to win, so that's why I'm saying Wales will win, and I think it'll just be it'll be about 5 points or something, because I think Ireland will make it an edgy game for the most part.
I'm trying to dig out my prediction for this one. So I went. By the way, I went France by 3 because I just because I am doing for quality of players over coaching. There, you never know which way it's going to go. And Italy have kept the gap close during this one. I've gone Wales by 5. It should be a cracker of a game, and I say whoever gets that lead, whoever's in the lead after 20 minutes, I think will keep their necks in front all the way through to the end.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that's how it's going to go as well. So, anything else you want to talk about, man? Or you want to talk a bit about the World League? What are your thoughts on that? I'm against it personally.
You're against it? Okay. All right. So, there was a good article, or not a good article. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. There was a good quote in one of the Guardian articles, which basically said this idea that World Rugby, or that rugby as a whole, is at a crossroads, suggests that we can actually continue as we are, or turn left to the World League, or turn right to CVC or another big investor into the Six Nations. We can't keep going on the way we are. The sponsorship money has softened and gone through the floor. Guinness are paying half of what RBS were playing for the sponsorship of the Six Nations. The RFU have sacked, made redundant 62 odd people last year, I think it was. The New Zealand Rugby Union have said that post Rugby World Cup, they're predicting they'll be running unsustainable deficits is how they say it, i.e. spending too much money, and not making enough. So the world over, unions are not making enough money to pay the players what they want to get paid and what the clubs in England and France are willing to pay. Now, whether the clubs in England and France can afford to pay those wages is debatable, but they are doing it, and so is the top league in Japan. But that's a different setup because they're owned by companies, they're company teams, and so their whole financial model is totally different. So something's got to change to bring more money into the game because it's just not sustainable. It's as it is, and if we keep going the way we're going, the top players are going to play just for their clubs, and the international game is going to diminish, and therefore less money is going to come into the game, and the whole thing's going to collapse, or at least probably not collapse, but we'll sort of take a gentle downward slope. So we've got to take one or two routes. If we go down the CVC route of lots of money for the Six Nations, now everyone's saying it like it is life-changing money, that there's 600 million. Now it's life-changing money for me, 600 million. Okay, it's a lot of cash. Don't get me wrong, but 100 million for the RFU is about the same as 1 year's revenue for New Zealand Rugby. New Zealand Rugby makes about 140 million US dollars, I think it is, per year. So so slightly less, but it's comparable. So it's not as much money as you'd think. It's 1 year's worth of revenue, which is a chunk of cash. Don't get me wrong. But if you think that England paid, was it £75 million to upgrade Twickenham ahead of the Rugby World Cup in 2015, and spent most of it on Wi-Fi, it's not that much money. If you're going to be spending 50 odd million on having high-speed Wi-Fi in your main stadium, then 100 million is not a lot of cash. So it's, to me, people are looking at the numbers thinking that they're big numbers, and they are big numbers. Don't get me wrong, but in the grand scheme of things, they're not that big numbers. So, and then to lose 30% of your income forevermore from the Six Nations, I think that that would be devastating for the Six Nations. So I think going down that CVC route is the wrong way to go. Hence, the only option is to go down the World League route. And I think that at the moment, Tier 2 nations have no way of making it to the Tier 1. So a pathway of some sort has to be put together. And this is probably the best suggestion I've heard so far. The one thing I wouldn't have is the final at the end. I would just say, if you've played every other team once, I would just have a table, and who's ever top of the table is the World League champion that year. I wouldn't bother with the playoff. That's the only difference I would make.
Okay, no, I'm just against it. This is probably from a personal point of view, because I think it's not going to be good for the club game going forwards, because you find most of the time of year players will be away of international duties, and considering the physicality that's already in the game just now at the top end, they're playing at a level that naturally human bodies aren't made for. So they're already basically at the limit. And I think for player welfare's sake, it's not going to be a great thing. I mean, I take into account what you're saying about the finances and that, and find that all pretty fascinating to listen to, actually. But I think it just, again, shows just how much a lot of it is coming down to money. But I think it's personally only a short-term fix. I don't know if it's going to be a good thing long-term at all. And I think a lot of players potentially, I might be getting this wrong here, potentially could be going from the academy into their clubs and then being rushed into international rugby, possibly. I don't know. I might be getting that wrong there, but I just think it's. Because the format, I mostly like it so far. The only changes I would make is the promotion relegation, perhaps, to the Six Nations and possibly the Rugby Championship as well. And I would try and invest more into the Tier 2 nations to bring them up and have more professional leagues in-house in their own nations. But in terms of financial realism, after hearing what you said there, I'm not fully sure that's possible. I mean, I'm not an economics expert, but That's just the way I see it. I would personally prefer if the format was just tweaked a little bit, but not significantly. And also the club games, I think if there were less club games, but again, from a business point of view, I don't know. I mean, less club games, like the Super Rugby could be changed. Top, the English top 10 is it's 12, isn't it? 11, something like that. And
12. There's 12 in the Premiership. But so basically, the Southern Hemisphere system kind of works, right? So, in New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia, you have 3 tiers of rugby. So you've got international rugby, which with the new proposal would be 11 games, but currently is 14 for them. You then got Super Rugby, which is a 16-game regular season plus playoffs of 3 rounds of playoffs, so a maximum of 19 games. And then basically the players that play Super Rugby, 19 games a year is not enough rugby for them to earn a living, right? And not enough rugby for them to develop and play. So what they then have is, in South Africa it's called the Currie Cup, it's the National Rugby Championship, or the NRC in Australia, and then in New Zealand it's the Mitre 10 Cup, or what used to be called the NPC. Or National Provincial Championship. So basically the players that don't play Super Rugby go off and play a 10-week regular season plus 2 semi-final finals knockouts, while the internationals are away playing internationals at the Rugby Championship and in November. So that way you have that separation. In Europe, you have basically the Guinness Premiership or the Pro 14, which has effectively a 22-week, or in the case of the Pro 14, a 21-week season, regular season, and then the Pro 14 has 3 rounds of knockouts, and the Guinness Premiership has 2. So basically, you have 22 plus 2, so it's about 24 weeks, plus the European Championship, which is 6 plus 3 rounds. And the problem is that there isn't that place for the non-internationals to go play whilst the internationals are playing, to earn the money or to have a livelihood or play enough rugby in their legs. And because you don't have that third tier for them to go off to, you end up with the overplaying that you have now. Ireland get around that by basically not playing their players much in the Pro 14 and treat the Pro 14 as a sort of non-international space, because I mean, Sexton plays like 3 or 4 Pro 14 games a year at the end of the year, so he effectively doesn't play Pro 14. So that's how Ireland handle it, but nobody else really has got their head round how to stop the international players playing too much rugby whilst providing enough rugby for the non-international players. Yeah, and that's the big problem in Europe.
Yeah, I mean that's
my point of view.
Yeah, no, the Irish system, because I've spoken to a few Irish guys like this now. They're liking it as it is, for a lot of the reasons you said, is that their international team is, they made sure that their senior players, the main players, are getting plenty of rest time, and that the Pro 14 is just seen as a developing ground more than anything, which I think is a system that works pretty well. But again, a lot of this World League thing, it's to do with business and to do with like big money. As well, which I'm not for, mainly because rugby and football, or soccer, if you're watching in America, are completely different. They're completely different sports. They require different physicalities, different rest time off after games, and all that. And I'm just like, with the amount of injuries that are happening in rugby now, and the concussions as well, and post-career injuries that are affecting players' careers after they've played, and concussions that are affecting long-term health as well. I'm just worried that those numbers are going to go through the roof with this World League. So that's a big reason for me.
But the World League wouldn't increase the number of games that Scotland play, okay? Because you'd play your Six Nations as you do now. You play 3 games in July, which is what you play in June now. You'd play 3 games in November, which is what you do now. So effectively, you'd play the same number of games. Now, fine, you wouldn't, and you'd have Japan and Fiji in either that. You have one of those in the July window, one of those in the November window. So you'd have your tier 2 lesser game there as well. So from a Scotland point of view, as long as they don't make that final, they'll play the exact same numbers as they do now games. So it's not actually increasing the number of games.
Right. That was just my understanding last time I read it. So I mean,
so yeah, but what they had before, and this is where Sexton and Kieran Reid, now two players who are likely to make the finals. Let's be honest. Yeah. So basically, the team that tops the Six Nations group after their 11 games, and the team that tops the Rugby Championship group after 11 games or the top two teams each, were going to play a semi-final and a final in November, which would take that window up to 5 weeks and mean 5 games on the trot. Now they've got rid of the semi-finals, and they're going to have, and they're suggesting just having a final there. So it'll be four games on the trot, so one extra game for the top teams, the 2 top teams only. So from that point of view, it's not a lot of extra. I guess they're all intense games because you're not going to go on a tour.
That's the big thing we're trying to come from as well. Because at least with summer tours and autumn tests, they're kind of one-off tests. I'm not saying they're not intense at all, but they are more. They're just one-off tests more than anything. Whereas these, they're actually seriously competing for a big prize at the end of it.
But then so under the current situation, Scotland toured New Zealand, I think the last time in 2001.
2000, yeah.
Was it 2000? Okay, 2000. Fine. They will not tour New Zealand in the next 4 years.
Still?
Okay, because Wales, if in the current situation, Wales are going to get 3 tests in 2020, and Ireland are going to get 3 tests in 2022. And Scotland aren't going to tour New Zealand during a Lions tour year, so that'll be France. Mm-hmm. So what we're basically saying is under the current system, Scotland will never play New Zealand in New Zealand for the foreseeable future. Only the top, only England, Wales, Ireland, and France will get to play New Zealand in New Zealand, which to me, I don't think is good.
No, I agree with you there, actually, yeah.
So there's lots of problems with the current setup that need to be fixed, and no one else has come up with one that's, for me, is viable than this one. And for me, there has to be a pathway that Tier 2 nations can see how they can become a Tier 1 nation.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, is this the answer? I mean, I'm not sold yet, but I mean...
Yep.
I might. That's the thing. I'm big enough boy to say I might be wrong about it. But I'm at the moment I'm very skeptical as to whether this is the way to go. But who knows? We'll see. I mean, the initial proposal of just having the 12 thing and excluding the Pacific Island nations and Georgia, who are actually all nations who are rugby mad and on the up. The initial one, I was completely against that, but. I mean, I have seen that. I've not read the whole thing yet, but I have seen there has been looking to be changes to that. So, but yeah, the initial one.
Okay, so that was a total non-starter. Now, where that one came from, and for all the people who listen to the Egg Chasers podcast, unfortunately, the Egg Chasers. I love the Egg Chasers guys. Don't get me wrong. Unfortunately, they got this wrong though. There's a lot of people in the UK now think that basically the Players Association leaked that. They didn't. That leak came through the New Zealand Herald first, about 7 hours before the players did their announcement, and the players got it from the New Zealand Herald. Now, that was never the initial plan. The initial plan was with promotion and relegation. That was the counter proposal from the Six Nations, because Scotland and Italy and Ireland to a certain degree don't like the idea of promotion and relegation. So that was that was a counter proposal that I believe that New Zealand Rugby decided, hey, let's leak this, get public opinion sorted out, because this is a direction we cannot go down, and hence it appeared in the New Zealand Herald. Now maybe I'm wrong. Maybe South Africa decided to leak it via New Zealand, which would be very strange. So because of where it came out, I think it came out because the New Zealand Rugby Union decided that this was a totally unpalatable option with no relegation and promotion, and so hence I think that's been the kind of the story behind the scenes, that people aren't getting is that World Rugby never wanted this. This was a counter proposal from the Six Nations, but people aren't throwing the Six Nations under the bus to say so. And
do you think it would throw the world? Sorry, do you think it would throw the Rugby World Cup or the Lions to run under the bus with this new proposal? Or
so not the Rugby World Cup, because they won't host it during Rugby World Cup years, and I don't. And if they get rid of the final, I can see that. I don't see how it would dilute the Rugby World Cup either.
Yeah, fair.
Now the
fair
Lions.
Point. I agree with you there.
So the way the Lions is going to work is basically whoever the Lions are touring. Now this is what I'm. They haven't explicitly said this, but looking at it, they said it's like 10 games during a Lions tour. So it's like, okay. So basically, what they're saying is the Rugby Championship team that is playing the Lions will take them out of the tournament. Everyone else will play, and obviously will take out the Lions players, and the Lions players will go and play that team, be New Zealand, South Africa, or Australia. And basically, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales would continue to compete in the World League, but just without their Lions players. Now, because they haven't got their Lions players, we think that it's unfair that they'll get promoted or relegated, so hence we'll cut promotion relegation that season. It's basically what they're saying.
Okay.
So, so they'll still play the same 11 games, just one of the just all your games against, say, South Africa in 2021 just won't count towards this competition.
Oh no, that's interesting to know. I mean, I would I agree with the World Cup year, but for Lions year, I would scrap it entirely as well.
I like the idea of scrapping it and having a whole bunch of tier 2, tier 1 crossover games.
Yeah, I agree with that, and of course I'm all for the tier 2 nations working their way up, because I think for the sport to grow, more money where possible needs to be going to them so they can develop and they can push up to the top. But so with the promotion relegation thing, I mean, that could possibly work. That would be a factor, but yeah, we'll see long term if it goes through what will happen there. So that'll be interesting. You okay to call time soonish, man? Just because I'm a bit conscious of how much data this is going to take up on my laptop.
If anyone gets to this stage, well done, congratulations, you're an hour and a half in. Well done, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a blast.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming on, Paul. Good to speak to you. Hopefully we'll have you on again. Like I say, your link will be in the description. Driving Maul. Check out his channel. It's awesome. He gives some good insight into Six Nations rugby, Super Rugby, Pro 14 rugby, Top 14 rugby, you name it. So like I said, man, thanks for coming on, and nice talking to you.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care, buddy. I'm just gonna stop recording.
Missing you already.
Right.